One of the other kind of ideas that's been around but has gotten traction in particular in the last 12 months, I think, is the idea of like a DAO, or a decentralized autonomous organization, as a, you know, mentioned as a governance structure. What have you learned about getting involved in protocols as a validator or just as an investor or whatever, in whatever context, in a DAO based governance model versus like a non-DAO based governance model? Like what are the nuances there?
Yeah. So Figment actually has launched a DAO. And so I'll give the setup. It'll take me about 30 seconds and I'll describe how your question. So one of the things we said is, you know, our mission is we want to increase the usage of blockchains. And we see the current bottleneck is actually not enough developers. So we created a free resource called Figment Learn that put out tons of tutorials out in the world about how to launch a smart contract on network X, how to do this, how to create a clone of Uniswap. And so, you know, we created hundreds of tutorials and we've had tens of thousands of developers go through that. And we created a model where we started crowdsourcing it. We'd send tokens to people who write the content. This is all going great. And, you know, in the last year, I think we sent out $500,000 of tokens to people who are creating the content. And so what I asked the team is I said, great, you know, we've had tens of thousands of developers, we've onboarded and we've converted these Web2 developers and they're working in the space now. How do we do 1 million developers in 2022? And so we said, okay, systems design, what's the bottleneck? The bottleneck was actually us. The bottleneck was us approving the content, editing the content, sending out the tokens. And so we said to earlier, this idea of incentive design, what roles can we enable the community to take on? And so we turned Figment Learn, this sort of centralized way for us to create tutorials, into a DAO, into a community where now through incentivizing people with the token, there's people who are the editors and they get paid to do that. There's people who are coming up with ideas and there's people who are writing the content and there's people who are going through the content. And so these are all different roles you can have and they're all sort of working together with a token. And what's fascinating is like, this is becoming people's jobs now. Like they're working for the DAO. And so the question then is how is this governed? And so I would say governance is one of these things where now that we have this token, it's very easy to say, okay, vote based on the number of tokens you have. This is called sort of colloquially one token, one vote. I think this is going to end terribly. I think that, you know, there's going to be a ton of governance blowups. Governance in crypto is one of the great opportunities.
Is that because
it's two things, centralization and lack of participation. And so, like people might not be aware that there's even a vote happening, you know? So like who has the incentive to go popularize a vote or like put the word out about a vote? So it's what you see in like sort of like regional politics, right? Like, you know, 500 people showed up for this important vote or something. So my point is to say that governance is a great opportunity. The current implementations are all very, very basic. One token, one vote. And so I think that this is one of the areas where I think we'll have to see a lot of, there's an opportunity to do something really interesting. For example, instead of one token, one vote, you could say like, well, who's actually participated in the network? Or let's do it based on how long you've held the token for. So you can't just come in and buy up everything and vote the next day. Maybe you have to have the equivalent of a vesting period before you have governance rights. And so there's lots of things that can be done. I would say we're going to see a ton of blowups in DAOs. I think a ton of DAOs are just going to, you know, totally fold. But this is part of the experimentation. And so the idea of we're going to see a lot of things that have already failed be tested again. But I think it's cool. It's cool to see. I think something good will come out of it. And we created the DAO not because we wanted to like get a token and do all this stuff. We thought it's a way to have the biggest impact. We thought we could actually, you know, 10x our impact by bringing the group in and incentivizing everyone to work together as opposed to working through us as a gatekeeper. A lot of DAOs maybe don't have the same goal, and maybe the governance is going to be different. But that's how we're set up.